North Carolina holds extreme landscape contrasts, from the cold and isolated peaks of the Appalachian Mountains to the storm-prone outer islands of the Outer Banks in the Atlantic Ocean. But behind that dramatic natural beauty lies a darker layer of history, unsolved colonial mysteries, and haunting remains of failed industry. The thick fog that often covers the western mountains and the roaring sea winds along the eastern coast seem to keep memories of death, tragedy, and supernatural phenomena alive in local collective memory. So, get ready to visit 15 of the creepiest locations in the Old North State. For fans of the Hunger Games, this town should feel familiar. Henry River Mill Village operates as a textile ghost town, frozen in the early 20th century in Burt County. Founded in 1905, this self-contained worker village once thrived by producing high-quality cotton yarn before its main mill permanently closed in the 1970s. When all residents left in a mass exodus, the place was abandoned, leaving rows of two-story wooden homes slowly decaying in haunting silence. The sight of dozens of empty worker houses, with broken glass windows slowly swallowed by brush, creates a deeply dystopian American atmosphere. Walking through the creaking wooden corridors of Henry River at sunset gives a thick, chilling sensation, as if the energy of workers who spent their lives under the harsh textile industry still remains. The atmosphere was so powerful that the site was used as a filming location to portray the poor District 12 in the Hunger Games film franchise. From the textile ruins inland, we move to Brunswick Town, founded in 1726 and historically known as one of the first colonial port towns in the Cape Fear region. The town's glory collapsed tragically when British troops burned and destroyed the entire settlement in 1776 during the American Revolutionary War, causing survivors to abandon it completely and never rebuild. Today, this quiet, historic site only leaves behind the giant brick walls of St. Philip's Anglican Church, standing roofless in the middle of a coastal pine forest. The old church ruins are surrounded by an 18th century cemetery filled with cracked, moss-covered stone markers and the twisted roots of large trees. The atmosphere feels heavy because of its isolated position by the river, where sea wind blowing through the empty brick walls often fuels local supernatural claims about the sounds of marching soldiers from the past. And if Brunswick Town was destroyed by the fire of war, this town died slowly from disease and underground crime. Buffalo City lies hidden deep inside the harsh swamps of the Dare County Peninsula, a place now fully reclaimed by the wild. The extreme geographic isolation of the swamp made it difficult for federal law to reach the area, allowing bloody conflicts between smuggling gangs to spread through the forest. When the timber supply ran out and illegal alcohol operations were shut down, deadly typhus and cholera outbreaks struck this poor settlement, forcing the remaining residents to flee in the 1940s. Today, there is no land road to Buffalo City. The area only holds rusting giant iron equipment in black swamp water and rotting timber rail lines beneath a forest canopy inhabited by venomous snakes. Moving on from Buffalo City, Pisgah National Forest also hides the concrete ruins of a town destroyed by raging flash floods. Mortimer sits inside the isolated Wilson Creek area of Caldwell County, a valley surrounded by steep, vertical rock cliffs. The town first grew rapidly as a major sawmill center in the early 20th century. Mortimer came to a sudden end because of a massive flash flood in 1916 that swept away much of the town's infrastructure. Determined residents tried to rebuild the settlement, but a second, far more destructive flash flood struck again in 1940, flattening what remained and convincing people that the valley was cursed. Today, Mortimer is a total ghost town covered by dense vegetation. Visitors can only find the remains of concrete building foundations, collapsed stone mill walls, and the remains of a railroad bridge hanging strangely above the quiet river. Mortimer's destruction by water was repeated on an outer island along the Atlantic coast. This place is Portsmouth Island, an isolated part of the Outer Banks that can only be reached by special charter boat across shallow, dangerous waters. Portsmouth stands as an intact maritime ghost town in haunting silence, with rows of coastal-style wooden stilt houses, a post office, and an old church standing empty against the salty Atlantic wind. Founded in 1753, Portsmouth originally operated as a very busy logistics port before major storms changed the coastal geography and destroyed its economy. The town's population consistently declined until the last two female residents decided to leave permanently in 1971 after another major storm cut off their supply access. From a quiet port town at the edge of the ocean, we climb far inland into the Great Smoky Mountains, where a town was intentionally drowned by government policy. This is Proctor, with a form of isolation that is highly unusual in the United States. At first, this small town was home to a prosperous logging community before the federal government built Fontana Dam during World War II. To supply electricity for military industry. The dam project flooded the main land route to Proctor, completely isolating the town from the outside world and forcing all residents to evacuate immediately. Today, the only way to see Proctor's remains is by hiking trails for dozens of miles or crossing the lake by boat. In the quiet mountain forest, giant stone chimneys standing alone without houses, open cellars, and sunken railroad remains create a haunting impression of a civilization forcibly erased by modernization. Meanwhile, we now move into a legendary horror atmosphere on a coastal island that witnessed the death of one of the most feared pirates in history. The fishing village of Ocracoke sits at the southern end of the Outer Banks, a remote community that has preserved an old 17th century English dialect because of centuries of geographic isolation. Ocracoke holds a special place in American maritime horror history because it served as the main hideout of Edward Teach, the legendary pirate known as Blackbeard. In the shallow waters known as Teach's Hole, just off the coast of Ocracoke, Blackbeard was brutally killed in a bloody naval battle in November 1718, where his head was cut off and hung from a British military ship. A strong coastal urban legend among Americans says Blackbeard's headless spirit is sometimes seen swimming beneath the foggy seawater at night, searching for his missing body. Ocracoke's old white lighthouse, built in 1823, completes the small town's landscape with a cold coastal Gothic aura after dark. Next, do not forget Manteo on Roanoke Island. This place holds the key to one of the greatest and most confusing historical mysteries on the American mainland, the Lost Colony. In 1587, more than 115 English settlers founded their first colony here under the leadership of John White. When White returned from England 3 years later with supplies, the entire colony had vanished without a trace. There were no signs of battle, no human bodies, and all the homes had been carefully dismantled. The only clue left behind was one mysterious word carved into a post near the defensive fort, Croatoan. To this day, the final fate of those people remains an unresolved historical mystery. Walking around Manteo's harbor area and the Roanoke historic site creates an uneasy psychological feeling, as the disappearance of more than 100 lives in the silence of the pine forest centuries ago leaves a deeply mystical atmosphere for historians and visitors. Have you ever heard of Beech Mountain? As it appears, this is the highest elevation town in the eastern United States, making it a popular ski resort destination when winter arrives. But on this mountaintop, often covered in thick fog, there are the remains of an abandoned theme park called Land of Oz, opened in 1970 based on the classic story The Wizard of Oz. Today, the cracked yellow brick path, now covered in thick green moss, surrounded by witch character markers and artificial trees with eerie faces, creates a powerful dystopian horror scene when mountain fog begins to fall across the summit area. The theme park went into dramatic financial decline after a mysterious fire destroyed its main castle, followed by widespread theft of memorabilia during the 1980s. From the dystopian visuals of Beech Mountain, we move to a place where geological darkness dominates the landscape. Not just any town, Bat Cave is a small community located in a narrow mountain pass in Henderson County. Its eerie name comes from a geological formation, a giant sandstone fissure cave system in Black Mountain, home to one of the largest colonies of mouse-eared bats in the southeastern United States. This cave network is strictly closed to the public for environmental safety and because of extreme collapse risks. The physical landscape of Bat Cave is highly dramatic. Its road is narrow, squeezed between tall, wet rock cliffs and a fast-moving river, causing parts of the area to receive little direct sunlight and feel cold throughout the day. This natural Gothic character is strengthened by local speculative stories about underground cave labyrinths stretching deep into the earth, creating a constant aura of mystery for anyone driving through the mountain gap. The eerie cave atmosphere of Bat Cave also echoes in one of the most famous supernatural urban legend sites in the forest near Siler City. Siler City itself is a functional small farming town in Chatham County, but its main horror attraction lies several miles outside town, deep in the darkness of dense pine forest. The place is known across the United States as the Devil's Tramping Ground. This site is a nearly perfect circle of bare ground about 40 feet wide. Strangely, no plants, grass, or trees have been able to grow there for hundreds of years, and local animals are said to refuse to cross the circle. Local folklore recorded since the Colonial era says this perfect circle is where the devil himself rises to the surface at night and walks in circles while planning humanity's destruction. Scientific attempts to study the soil's chemical composition have never produced a fully satisfying answer, allowing the site to keep its status as one of the strangest and most haunted places in North Carolina. If Siler City has the mystery of the Devil's Circle, a mountain-foot town holds the phenomenon of mysterious fireballs in the night sky. Linville is located in Burke County, under the shadow of the steep, rocky peak of Brown Mountain. This small town has drawn both scientific and supernatural attention because of the brown mountain lights, mysterious balls of light that have appeared periodically and floated above the ridge since the era of the Cherokee people centuries ago. These lights are often orange, blue, or white, moving randomly above the forest canopy without sound or any clear energy source. Multiple official investigations by United States geological agencies have been carried out, yet no theory from swamp gas to optical refraction has conclusively explained the phenomenon. The sight of mysterious fireballs emerging from the dark forest around Brown Mountain gives Linville a real atmosphere of science fiction and cosmic horror. Not far from there is a town called Valdese, founded in 1893 by a group of religious immigrants from the Italian Alps, known as the Waldensians. The town preserves a very unique physical character through thick, rough sandstone architecture, a wide network of underground spaces, and ancient winemaking traditions they brought from Europe. Valdese's eerie atmosphere comes from the theological history of the Waldensians, marked by bloody persecution, mass executions, and escape from Europe, with those memories preserved in local museums. The old underground rooms in downtown Valdese, once used for storage and secret worship, carry a strong claustrophobic feeling and are often associated by locals with mystical, ancient religious rituals. The ancient European history of Valdese contrasts with the presence of an abandoned modern Gothic castle in the woods of Rougemont. Rougemont functions as a small, rural suburban community on the edge of Durham County. In the silence of its dense forest stands a very strange architectural structure, Castle Mont Rouge. This eccentric Gothic-style castle was designed and built independently by an architect named Robert Mahaly in the 1990s as his private residence. Construction of the castle suddenly stopped after the tragic death of the architect's wife, leaving the stone complex with sharp Gothic towers completely abandoned in a half-finished condition. For years, Castle Mont Rouge stood empty among wild trees, with interiors filled with graffiti, collapsed ceilings, and giant spider webs, creating the image of a medieval witch's house stranded in rural North Carolina. Finally, there are the remains of an old institution filled with deep trauma in Concord. The city has grown rapidly in Cabarrus County, but it carries a feared aura attached to the Stonewall Jackson Youth Development Center. Founded in 1909, this place operated as a correctional center and prison for children and teenagers in trouble with the law during the early 20th century. The complex has a very dark institutional history, including official records of forced sterilization, of dozens of juvenile inmates, physical abuse, and extreme forced labor under strict guard supervision. Today, rows of 3-story red brick buildings with rusting barred windows stand abandoned behind tall barbed wire fences. The dark interior hallways, broken iron bed frames, and the aura of suffering from children once trapped inside the institution make this complex on the edge of Concord one of the most negative and haunted-feeling locations in North Carolina.